Danielle Owens had exactly 45 minutes to get back to the office before her next meeting, and the café's espresso machine had just broken down. She stood at the counter of Riverside Café, a cozy place with exposed brick walls and the scent of fresh pastries that usually made her morning bearable. The barista looked apologetic as she explained the situation, offering a rushed alternative. Danielle waved her hand, accepting whatever would get her out the door fastest. She was 28 years old and running a fashion retail company that her mother had built from scratch, and every minute counted these days. The drink arrived in a to-go cup, and Danielle grabbed it along with what she thought was her usual breakfast sandwich, racing out into the cool October morning. She made it 3 blocks before taking her first sip and nearly gagging. This wasn't her usual oat milk latte. This was something sweet and syrupy, tasting like vanilla and caramel had gotten into a fight and both lost. She looked at the cup. Written in marker, Sebastian, great. She had someone else's order. Danielle glanced at her watch. 40 minutes now. She could survive on the terrible sweet drink, she supposed, though she unwrapped her sandwich at the next red light only to find it was loaded with bacon. She was a vegetarian. This day was going spectacularly. By the time she reached her office building downtown, Danielle had consumed exactly none of her breakfast, and her stomach was growling. She tossed the sandwich in the trash and forced down some of the too sweet coffee, trying not to think about how this morning had started badly and would probably only get worse. She was wrong about that last part, though she would not know it for several hours. Danielle was deep in a budget meeting when her assistant knocked softly on the conference room door. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. He says it's about this morning." Danielle frowned, excusing herself and stepping into the hallway. Standing near the reception desk was a man she had never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he had run his hands through it too many times. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly, and he was holding a Riverside Café bag and a coffee cup. "Danielle Owens," he asked, his voice warm and deep. "That's me. Can I help you?" He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I think I'm the one helping you. I'm Sebastian James. We accidentally swapped orders this morning at Riverside Café." He held up the bag and cup. "I'm guessing you ended up with my ridiculously sweet vanilla monstrosity and my bacon sandwich." Danielle blinked. "You came all the way here to return my order." "Well, I figured you'd want your actual breakfast. Plus, I ate your egg and cheese on whole wheat, so it seemed only fair I replace it." He extended the bag toward her. "The coffee might not be hot anymore, but I had them remake everything." She took the bag slowly, stunned. "How did you even find me? Your name was on your cup. I looked you up. Danielle Owens, CEO of Lux Lane Retail. Impressive, by the way." He said it casually, like tracking someone down to return a sandwich was a completely normal thing to do on a Tuesday afternoon. "That's a little creepy," Danielle said, though she could not quite keep the smile off her face. "Is it? I can go with that. Or we can call it determined." Sebastian shifted his weight, looking almost boyish despite his size and the expensive suit. "Look, I felt bad. You clearly grabbed my stuff by mistake, and I figured your day probably started as badly as mine did. Thought I'd try to fix it." Danielle looked down at the bag in her hands, then back up at him. He had kind eyes, dark brown and warm, with little crinkles at the corners that suggested he smiled often. "You didn't have to do this." "I know, but I wanted to." He paused. "Anyway, I should let you get back to work. Enjoy your actual breakfast." He turned to leave, and Danielle heard herself say, "Wait." He stopped, glancing back. She felt her cheeks warm slightly. "Thank you, really. This was incredibly thoughtful." Sebastian's smile returned, softer this time. You're welcome, Danielle. She watched him leave, then looked down at the bag in her hands, shaking her head in disbelief. Her assistant appeared at her elbow. Well, that was interesting. That was bizarre, Danielle corrected, though she was smiling. She opened the bag to find her usual sandwich and, to her surprise, a chocolate croissant she had not ordered. Tucked inside was a receipt with a note scrawled on the back. Sorry about the mix-up. Hope your day gets better. Sebastian. She ate the sandwich during the rest of her meeting, and for the first time in weeks, actually tasted her food instead of just consuming fuel. The chocolate croissant she saved for later, eating it at her desk while reviewing quarterly reports, and she found herself wondering about the stranger who had tracked her down just to fix a morning mistake. The next day, Danielle arrived at Riverside Café at her usual time, 7:30 in the morning, prepared to laugh off yesterday's incident with the barista. Instead, she found Sebastian James standing in line 3 people ahead of her. He was wearing a navy suit today, no tie, his collar unbuttoned in a way that should have looked unprofessional but somehow worked on him. He was looking at his phone, frowning slightly, and Danielle debated whether to say hello or just pretend she had not seen him. The decision was made for her when he glanced up and their eyes met. His face brightened immediately. Danielle, good morning. Sebastian, hi. She stepped out of line to join him. Do you usually come here? I do, actually. Every morning for the past 6 months. I'm surprised we haven't run into each other before. Different schedules, I guess. Danielle tilted her head. Although I'm here pretty regularly too. They moved up in line together, and when it was Sebastian's turn to order, he gestured for her to go first. Please, I owe you after yesterday. You really don't, but thank you. She ordered her usual oat milk latte and egg and cheese sandwich, then stepped aside. Sebastian ordered his vanilla caramel latte with extra caramel and a bacon, egg, and cheese on a bagel. That's a lot of sugar for breakfast, Danielle observed. He grinned. I have a terrible sweet tooth. My dentist loves me, or loves my money anyway. He paid for both their orders before she could protest, waving off her objections. Consider it a full apology for the mix-up. You already apologized, with replacement breakfast and an extra croissant. Then consider it me being selfish because I'm hoping you'll sit with me for 10 minutes. Danielle checked her watch. She had time, if barely. 10 minutes. Then I really do have to go. They sat at a small table by the window, and Danielle found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did these days. Sebastian was easy to talk to, asking questions that seemed genuinely interested rather than polite. He wanted to know about her company, about what it was like running a business, about her plans for expansion. In turn, she learned he worked in real estate development, that he had moved to the city 8 years ago from Boston, and that he had a habit of reading terrible thriller novels on his commute. Define terrible, Danielle said, laughing. The kind where the hero is a former Navy SEAL assassin who also happens to be a gourmet chef and plays classical piano. You know, relatable everyman stuff. That sounds amazing, actually. Oh, they're wonderful. No literary merit whatsoever, but incredibly entertaining. Sebastian glanced at his watch and sighed. I think your 10 minutes is up. I should let you get to work. They walked out together, and at the corner where their paths would diverge, Sebastian hesitated. Would it be weird if I said I hope I see you tomorrow? Danielle felt something flutter in her chest, unfamiliar and not entirely unwelcome. It would be weirder if you tracked me down at my office again. He laughed, a real laugh that made his eyes crinkle. Point taken. Same time tomorrow, then. Maybe, she said, but she was smiling as she walked away. He was there the next morning. And the morning after that, by Friday, it had become a routine. They would meet at Riverside Café, order their usual drinks, and sit together for 15 or 20 minutes before heading to their respective offices. Danielle found herself looking forward to these mornings in a way she had not looked forward to anything in months. Running Lux Lane had consumed her life for the past 2 years since her mother had retired and handed her the reins, and somewhere along the way, she had forgotten what it felt like to simply enjoy someone's company. Sebastian made her laugh. He was quick-witted and self-deprecating, telling stories about construction disasters and difficult clients with a humor that never felt mean-spirited. He asked about her life with genuine curiosity, remembering small details from previous conversations. When she mentioned she was stressed about an upcoming product launch, he did not offer unsolicited advice or try to fix her problems. He just listened, which was somehow exactly what she needed. On Friday, as they were leaving the café, Sebastian said, "I know this might be forward, but would you want to have dinner sometime? Actual dinner, not just coffee and sandwiches at 7 in the morning." Danielle's heart did that fluttering thing again. Like a date. Exactly like a date, yes. He looked almost nervous, which she found endearing on someone so confident otherwise. "I'd like that," she said. His smile was brilliant. "Saturday night. Saturday's perfect." They exchanged phone numbers, and Danielle spent the rest of the day distracted, thinking about what she would wear and whether she should tell her best friend Mara about this or wait until after to see if it went well. She decided on telling Mara, who screamed so loudly through the phone that Danielle had to hold it away from her ear. "You have a date with the sandwich guy," Mara crowed. "This is the most romantic thing that has ever happened to anyone in the history of the world. You're exaggerating." "I am not. He tracked you down to return your breakfast, Danny. That's movie-level romantic." Danielle could not argue with that. Saturday evening arrived with her standing in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying on and discarding 5 different outfits before settling on a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. She did her makeup carefully, letting her dark hair fall in soft waves around her shoulders, and when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy. When had she stopped looking happy? Sebastian picked her up at 7, and when she opened the door, the look on his face made every minute of preparation worthwhile. "Wow, you look incredible. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." He was wearing dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and he looked unfairly handsome. He took her to a restaurant she had heard of but never visited, an intimate Italian place with soft lighting and candles on every table. They were seated in a corner booth, and Danielle realized this was the first proper date she had been on in over a year. The realization should have made her nervous, but instead, she just felt excited. "So," Sebastian said once they had ordered wine and appetizers, "I've been talking about myself all week at coffee. Tell me something real about you, something I wouldn't find in an interview or company profile." Danielle considered the question. "I never wanted to run my mother's company." His eyebrows rose. No, I mean, I'm proud of what she built and I love the company, but when I was younger I wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school, probably 2nd or 3rd grade. I loved the idea of helping kids learn to read, watching them discover stories for the first time. She took a sip of wine. "But my mom built Lux Lane from nothing, and when she asked me to take over, I couldn't say no. It felt like I'd be letting her down." "Do you regret it?" Sebastian asked gently. "Some days, yes. Other days, no. I'm good at what I do, and there's satisfaction in that." "But it's not the same as passion, you know." She paused. "What about you? Was real estate always the plan?" "God, no. I wanted to be an architect. I have a degree in architecture, actually. but I quickly realized I liked the building part more than the designing part. I liked seeing projects come together, coordinating all the moving pieces, so I shifted into development. He leaned back, swirling his wine. I started working for a firm in Boston, worked my way up, and eventually went out on my own about 5 years ago. That must have been terrifying. It was. It still is sometimes, but it's also the best decision I ever made. He looked at her directly. I think there's something to be said for building your own thing, even if it's scary. They talked through dinner, the conversation flowing as easily as it had over morning coffee. Danielle learned that Sebastian had a younger sister who was a doctor in Chicago, that his parents had divorced when he was 16, and he had spent years mediating between them, and that he had a deep and abiding love for old movies from the 1940s. She told him about growing up as an only child, about the pressure of being her mother's legacy, about how she sometimes felt like she was playing a role rather than living her life. "You don't seem like you're playing a role," Sebastian said. "You seem very much like yourself." "Maybe that's because you didn't know me before all this," Danielle replied. "Before I became the CEO, the face of the company, sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder where I went." Sebastian reached across the table and took her hand. His was warm and solid, and the touch sent electricity through her. "I think you're still in there. Maybe you just need to remember how to let yourself out." It was such a simple thing to say, but it hit her harder than she expected. She squeezed his hand, grateful. After dinner, Sebastian walked her home even though it was out of his way. They strolled slowly through the cooling night air, and Danielle found herself wishing the evening did not have to end. When they reached her building, she turned to face him. "I had a really wonderful time tonight." "So did I." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "Can I see you again, and not just at the café, though I'm definitely going to keep showing up there?" "I'd like that." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Danielle felt something click into place inside her chest, something that had been missing for longer than she cared to admit. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "Good night, Danielle." "Good night, Sebastian." She floated up to her apartment, already texting Mara before the elevator doors even closed. Over the next few weeks, Sebastian became a fixture in Danielle's life. They still met most mornings at Riverside Café, but now they also had dinner dates, weekend brunches, and long walks through the city where they would talk about everything and nothing. He came to her apartment and cooked for her, making elaborate meals while she sat on the counter and watched, offering commentary and stealing tastes. She took him to her favorite bookstore, a cramped little shop in the village, and they spent hours browsing and recommending titles to each other. Danielle felt herself falling, and it was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. She had dated before, of course, but nothing had ever felt like this. Sebastian was attentive without being overbearing, affectionate without being clingy. He seemed genuinely interested in her life, asking about her work, and remembering the names of her employees and the details of her projects. When she had a particularly brutal day dealing with a supplier who had failed to deliver on time, Sebastian showed up at her office with takeout and let her vent for an hour without once trying to offer solutions. "You're really good at this," she told him as they ate Chinese food straight from the containers. "Good at what? Being a boyfriend?" Sebastian paused, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. "Is that what I am? Your boyfriend?" Danielle felt her cheeks warm. "I mean, if you want to be." "We've been seeing each other for almost a month now, and I'm not seeing anyone else, and I assumed you weren't either. But if I'm presuming too much..." He cut her off with a kiss. "I'm definitely your boyfriend. I've been your boyfriend in my head since our first date. I was just waiting for you to catch up." She laughed against his mouth. "Well, I've caught up now. Good." It was not all perfect, of course. Danielle's schedule was demanding, and there were days when she had to cancel plans last minute because of work emergencies. Sebastian was understanding, but she could tell it bothered him sometimes, even if he did not say so. For his part, Sebastian could be frustratingly vague about his own work, mentioning meetings and projects but never going into much detail. Danielle told herself it was just because he did not want to bore her, but sometimes she wondered if there was more to it. One evening in late November, they were having dinner at Sebastian's apartment, a beautiful loft in a converted warehouse with exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Danielle had been there several times now, but she never got tired of the view. "I need to tell you something," Sebastian said suddenly, setting down his fork. Danielle's stomach dropped. Those were never good words. "Okay," he took a breath. "I haven't been entirely honest with you about my work. Are you married?" The words came out before she could stop them. "What? No." "God, no, nothing like that." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "It's just, when I said I run a real estate development company, that's true, but I didn't mention the scale. My company, James Development Group, we're one of the largest firms in the region. We did $300 million in projects last year." Danielle stared at him. $300 million? Yes, you're rich, like really rich." "Yes," he said quietly. She sat back, processing. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because people treat me differently when they know. Either they want something from me, or they assume I'm some kind of entitled jerk, or they get weird about paying for dinner. You didn't know, and you just treated me like a normal person. I liked that. I liked being just Sebastian to you." He looked at her with something close to desperation. "I'm still just Sebastian. The money doesn't change who I am." Danielle thought about the past month, about the man who had tracked her down to return a sandwich, who had shown up at her office with takeout, who had listened to her talk about her fears and dreams without judgment. "No," she said slowly. "It doesn't change who you are, but you should have told me." "I know, I'm sorry. I was going to tell you earlier, but then time kept passing and it felt like this huge thing, and I didn't want to ruin what we had. Sebastian." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I don't care about your money. I mean, it's a lot to process, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me sooner." Relief flooded his face. "You're not mad?" "I'm a little annoyed you waited this long, but no, I'm not mad." She squeezed his hand. "Although this does explain the ridiculously nice apartment." He laughed, the tension breaking. "Yeah, the apartment's a bit of a tell, isn't it?" They talked more after that, Sebastian explaining the reality of his work life, the pressure and responsibility that came with running a company the size of his. Danielle understood that better than most people would, given her own position. They found common ground in the challenges of leadership, the loneliness that sometimes came with being the person making final decisions. "It's strange," Sebastian said later, as they sat on his couch watching the city lights reflect off the river. "I've dated women who were interested in what I could give them, and I've dated women who were intimidated by what I do. You're the first person who seems to see both sides of me as just part of the whole package." "That's because it is just part of the package," Danielle said, curling into his side. "You're ambitious and successful, but you're also kind and funny, and you make terrible jokes, and you read trashy novels. All of that is who you are." He kissed the top of her head. "How did I get so lucky to have you pick up my coffee order by mistake? Technically, I think you picked up mine." "Semantics." She tilted her face up to kiss him properly, and the conversation faded into more interesting activities. December arrived with the first real cold snap of the winter, and the city transformed into something magical with holiday lights and decorations. Danielle found herself busier than ever at work, preparing for the crucial holiday shopping season that would make or break their year. She spent long hours at the office, reviewing sales data and marketing strategies, approving inventory orders and staffing schedules. Sebastian was equally busy with year-end project completions and budget planning for the next year. They still made time for each other, though. Morning coffee at Riverside Café remained sacred, a quiet moment of connection before the chaos of the day began. Sebastian started keeping a change of clothes at Danielle's apartment, and she found herself staying over at his loft more often than not. They fell into an easy domesticity that felt natural and right, cooking together and watching movies and simply existing in each other's space. One Saturday, in mid-December, Sebastian took her ice skating at Rockefeller Center. It was touristy and cliché, but Danielle loved every minute of it, even when she nearly fell and Sebastian had to catch her, laughing. They drank hot chocolate and watched the giant Christmas tree sparkle, and Danielle thought she had never been happier. "Come with me to my company holiday party," she said impulsively. "It's next Friday. I know it's probably boring, but I'd really like you to be there." "I'd love to," Sebastian said. "Although I should warn you, I'm an excellent dancer. You might be stuck with me on the dance floor all night." "I'll take that risk." The party was held at a hotel ballroom downtown, elegant and professionally decorated. Danielle wore a deep green dress that made her eyes stand out, and Sebastian wore a perfectly tailored black suit that made her want to skip the party entirely and go straight home. But she had to make an appearance, had to schmooze with investors and thank her staff and play the role of CEO. Sebastian was perfect, charming everyone he met without overshadowing her. He asked intelligent questions about the business, complimented the staff on their work, and made her mother, who had come out of retirement for the party, laugh so hard she had tears in her eyes. Danielle watched him work the room and felt a surge of affection so strong it almost hurt. Later, when they were dancing to a slow song, Danielle rested her head on Sebastian's shoulder. "Thank you for being here." "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," he said simply. "My mother likes you. That's significant. She doesn't like anyone. I like her too. She reminds me of you." "Strong and brilliant and a little scary." Danielle laughed. "I'm scary, terrifying, in the best way." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "I'm falling in love with you, Danielle. I think I have been since the morning I chased you down with a sandwich." Her breath caught. They had not said those words yet, had been dancing around them for weeks. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. He kissed her there on the dance floor in front of her entire company, and Danielle did not care who saw. This was hers, he was hers, and she was his. Christmas came, and they spent it together at Sebastian's loft, cooking an elaborate dinner and exchanging gifts. Danielle gave him a first edition of one of his favorite terrible thriller novels, which she had tracked down through a rare book dealer. Sebastian gave her a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "For all the thoughts you keep locked inside," he said. "Maybe writing them down will help you figure out what you want." It was thoughtful and personal, and Danielle felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." "I love it." They made love that night with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, and Danielle felt complete in a way she had not known she was incomplete. The new year brought new challenges. Lux Lane was negotiating a potential merger with a smaller boutique chain, a deal that would significantly expand their market presence, but required months of careful planning and legal review. Danielle was in meetings constantly, traveling to look at locations and properties, working late into the night reviewing contracts and financials. Sebastian understood, but she could tell the distance was hard on him. They still had their morning coffee dates most days, but dinners became sporadic, and whole weekends passed where they barely saw each other. Danielle felt torn, wanting to give her relationship the attention it deserved, but also knowing her company needed her focus. "I'm sorry," she said one evening in late January after canceling their dinner plans for the third time in 2 weeks. "I know I've been terrible lately." "You haven't been terrible. You've been busy. There's a difference." Sebastian pulled her into a hug. "I just miss you." "I miss you too." "I miss us." She pressed her face into his chest. "This merger is important, though. If we pull it off, it could double our revenue. I know. And I'm proud of you for how hard you're working." He kissed her forehead. "Just don't forget to take care of yourself, too. And maybe remember you have a boyfriend who's madly in love with you." "How could I forget that?" She smiled up at him. "You're at the café every single morning whether I can meet you or not." "Of course I am. That's where I met you. It's our place." Something about the simple romance of that statement made Danielle's chest ache. She went up on her toes to kiss him. "I love you. I love you too." The merger negotiations stretched into February. There were complications with zoning laws for some of the new locations, disagreements about staffing structures, concerns from investors about overextension. Danielle felt like she was juggling flaming swords while walking a tightrope, and any mistake could bring the whole thing crashing down. Sebastian was her anchor through all of it. He listened when she needed to talk, distracted her when she needed to not think about work, and gave her space when she needed to focus. He brought her lunch at the office when she forgot to eat, sent her silly texts in the middle of the day just to make her smile, and never once complained about being low on her priority list. "You're incredible. You know that," Danielle told him one evening as they lay in bed at his place. She had actually managed to leave work at a reasonable hour, and they were making the most of the unexpected free time. "I'm really not. I just care about you. That's what makes you incredible." She traced patterns on his chest. "I don't think I've ever been with someone who's so supportive without trying to fix everything for me." "You don't need fixing. You just need someone in your corner." He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Besides, watching you work is amazing. You're brilliant at what you do, Danielle. The way you negotiate, the way you think 3 steps ahead, how you balance being tough and being fair. It's impressive. I learned from the best. My mother doesn't do anything halfway. Neither do you. That's one of the things I love about you." They made love slowly, sweetly, and afterward, Danielle felt more relaxed than she had in weeks. She fell asleep in Sebastian's arms, and for a few hours, the stress of the merger faded away completely. In early March, the merger finally went through. Danielle spent a frantic week ensuring the transition went smoothly, traveling to the new locations and meeting with staff. But by mid-month, things had settled into a new normal. Lux Lane was now twice the size it had been, with locations in 6 states instead of 3. And Danielle's days were still busy, but no longer completely overwhelming. She and Sebastian celebrated with a weekend away in upstate New York, renting a cabin near a lake and spending 2 days doing absolutely nothing productive. They hiked and cooked and sat by the fire, and Danielle felt like she could finally breathe again. "I was thinking," Sebastian said on their last evening there as they watched the sunset over the water. "My sister's getting married in June. It's going to be in Chicago, a whole big family affair. Would you want to come with me to meet your family?" Danielle's heart beat faster. "Yeah. I mean, they already know about you. I talk about you constantly, according to my sister, but I'd really like you to meet them officially. As my girlfriend," he paused. "Unless that's too much pressure. I know things have been intense with work." "It's not too much pressure." "I'd love to meet your family," she kissed him. "I want to be part of your life, Sebastian, all of it." His smile was radiant. "Good, because you already are." The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Danielle's company stabilized after the merger, and she found herself with more free time than she had had in years. She and Sebastian spent long weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants and visiting museums, and generally acting like tourists in their own hometown. They talked about the future in abstract terms, about what they wanted from life, about their dreams and fears. Danielle introduced Sebastian to Mara and her other close friends, and he fit into her social circle as if he had always been there. He made her laugh, challenged her thinking, and supported her ambitions while also reminding her there was more to life than work. She felt herself changing under his influence, becoming softer around the edges, more willing to be vulnerable, more open to joy. In June, they flew to Chicago for Sebastian's sister's wedding. Danielle was nervous about meeting his family, but those nerves evaporated the moment his sister Sophie threw her arms around her in greeting. "You're Danielle. Oh my God, Sebastian has told me so much about you. I feel like I already know you." Sophie was petite and energetic, with the same dark eyes as her brother. "Come on, you have to meet Mom and Dad. Well, they're not together anymore, but they're both here and being civil, which is basically a miracle." Sebastian's parents were charming in different ways. His mother was warm and artistic, a painter who lived in Santa Fe, while his father was more reserved, a retired engineer who asked Danielle thoughtful questions about her business. Both clearly adored their son and both welcomed Danielle with genuine affection. "He's happy," Sebastian's mother told Danielle privately at the rehearsal dinner. "I haven't seen him this happy in years, maybe ever. That's because of you." "I think it's mutual," Danielle said. "He makes me happier than I knew I could be." The wedding was beautiful, and dancing with Sebastian at the reception, surrounded by his family and friends, Danielle felt a sense of belonging she had not expected. This could be her life, she realized. This could be her family. The thought was overwhelming and wonderful all at once. On the flight home, Sebastian held her hand. "Thank you for coming. It meant a lot to me. Thank you for inviting me. Your family is wonderful. They loved you." Sophie asked if you could be her new best friend. He grinned. "I told her to get in line." Danielle laughed, then grew serious. "Sebastian, where do you see this going? Us, I mean." He looked at her for a long moment. "I see it going everywhere. I see us building a life together. I see mornings at our café and evenings in our home, wherever that might be. I see meeting you for lunch and falling asleep next to you every night. I see marriage and children if you want them, or just the two of us if you don't. I see growing old with you." He squeezed her hand. "Is that too much?" "No," Danielle said softly. "It's exactly right." They spent the summer in a haze of happiness. Danielle's business continued to thrive, and Sebastian landed a major development project that would transform an entire neighborhood. They were both busy but made time for each other, prioritizing their relationship in a way that felt natural rather than forced. In August, Sebastian took Danielle to his family's beach house on the coast for a long weekend. It was a sprawling place with weathered shingles and a porch that overlooked the ocean, and Danielle fell in love with it immediately. "My grandparents bought this place in the 60s, Sebastian explained as they walked along the beach. "We spent every summer here when I was a kid. It's one of my favorite places on earth. I can see why. It's magical." They spent the days swimming and reading on the beach, and the evenings cooking together and talking late into the night. On their last evening there, Sebastian suggested they watch the sunset from the beach. They walked down to the water's edge, and as the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, Sebastian took Danielle's hand. "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, and her breath caught at the expression on his face. "Okay." "That first morning at the café when we grabbed each other's orders by mistake, I thought it was just a funny coincidence, an accident. But looking back, I think maybe it was fate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Because that accident led me to you, and you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Danielle's eyes filled with tears as he dropped to one knee. Danielle Owens, I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. You're brilliant and strong and kind and beautiful, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you coffee in the morning and listening to you talk about your day and building a life with you. He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring with a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones. Will you marry me? Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her as the sun set behind them. Danielle felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This man, this wonderful man who had chased her down to return a sandwich, who had shown up every day to prove his feelings, who had loved her through her stress and her fears and her busy schedule, wanted to spend forever with her. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you so much. I love you too. Always. They called their families that evening, and the next day drove back to the city with Danielle unable to stop looking at her ring. Mara screamed again when Danielle told her, so loudly that Sebastian could hear it through the phone from across the room. The engagement period was joyful chaos. They decided on a spring wedding, giving themselves 8 months to plan. Danielle's mother immediately went into organizer mode, while Sophie appointed herself as assistant wedding planner, and between the two of them, Danielle barely had to make any decisions at all. Are you okay with this? Sebastian asked one evening as they reviewed seating charts that Sophie had drawn up. I know planning a wedding is supposed to be this big important thing, and you're basically just approving other people's ideas. I'm completely okay with it, Danielle said honestly. I don't care about the details. I just care about marrying you. He kissed her. Best answer possible. The months flew by. They found an apartment together, a spacious place in a pre-war building with high ceilings and lots of natural light, and spent weekends furnishing it and making it theirs. They merged their lives in all the small ways that mattered, learning each other's rhythms and habits, figuring out how to share space and make decisions together. There were adjustments, of course. Sebastian was tidier than Danielle and had strong opinions about how towels should be folded. Danielle needed quiet time in the mornings to ease into the day, while Sebastian woke up ready to talk. But they navigated these differences with humor and patience, and every small compromise felt like an investment in their future. Work remained demanding for both of them, but they had learned to balance their ambitions with their relationship. They instituted a rule that at least 3 nights a week were just for them. No work talk allowed unless it was absolutely necessary. They still met at Riverside Café most mornings, a tradition neither wanted to break, and the baristas had started making their drinks automatically whenever they walked in. You guys are like a real-life romance movie, one of the baristas told them one morning. The regulars talk about you. Your relationship goals. Sebastian grinned at Danielle. Hear that? We're relationship goals. That's because you chase me down to return my sandwich. Pretty sure that's peak romance. Best wrong order I ever got, he said, and kissed her right there in the cafe, making the barista sigh happily. Winter faded into spring, and suddenly the wedding was only weeks away. Danielle felt surprisingly calm about the whole thing, even as Sophie sent increasingly frantic texts about final details. She was marrying Sebastian. Everything else was just decoration. The night before the wedding, following tradition, they stayed apart. Danielle had a hotel room with Mara and Sophie, drinking champagne and doing face masks while Sebastian stayed at the apartment with his friends. It felt strange to sleep without him, but also sweet, knowing that the next time she saw him, it would be at the altar. "Are you nervous?" Mara asked. "Not even a little bit," Danielle said. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect April morning. Danielle got ready surrounded by the women she loved, her mother helping her into her dress while Sophie fixed her hair and Mara handled her makeup. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a woman who was genuinely, completely happy. The ceremony was held in a historic mansion with gardens in full bloom. Danielle's mother walked her down the aisle, and when she saw Sebastian waiting for her at the altar, her eyes filled with tears. He looked incredible in his tuxedo, but more than that, he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Sebastian promised to always bring her coffee and listen to her dreams and support her ambitions. Danielle promised to laugh at his terrible jokes and read his trashy novels and build a life with him that was full of love and adventure. When the officiant pronounced them married and Sebastian kissed her, Danielle felt like she was flying. The reception was a blur of joy. They danced and ate and laughed with their friends and family, and every moment felt perfect. During their first dance, Sebastian pulled her close and whispered, "Mrs. James, I like the sound of that." "Danielle Owens James," she corrected. "I'm keeping my name for work. But in every other way, I'm yours." "Sounds perfect to me." They honeymooned in Italy for 2 weeks, exploring Rome and Florence and Venice, eating incredible food and drinking amazing wine and falling even more in love with each other. It was the first time in years that Danielle had completely disconnected from work, and she realized how much she had needed the break. "We should do this more often," she said as they sat at a café in Venice, watching gondolas drift past. "Just take time to be together, to see the world." "Agreed." "I don't want to wake up in 20 years and realize we spent our whole marriage working." Sebastian reached across the table to take her hand. "You're too important to me for that." When they returned home, they settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. Everything just worked. They had their morning routine at Riverside Café, their evenings cooking together or going out with friends, their weekends exploring or relaxing at home. They talked about starting a family but decided to wait a year or two, wanting time to just be a married couple first. Danielle's company continued to grow, and she found herself with the luxury of delegating more, trusting her team to handle things she had once insisted on managing herself. Sebastian's development projects were transforming neighborhoods, creating affordable housing and community spaces, work he was genuinely proud of. They were both successful and driven, but they had learned to keep their ambitions in perspective, to remember what truly mattered. One morning, about 6 months after their wedding, they were sitting at their usual table at Riverside Café when Danielle suddenly laughed. "What?" Sebastian asked. "I was just thinking about that first morning, how frustrated I was about getting the wrong order. How weird I thought it was that you tracked me down." She shook her head. "If someone had told me that the stranger with my coffee would become my husband, I would have thought they were crazy." "Best mix-up of my life," Sebastian said, "although I maintain you took my order first." "Semantics," she echoed his words from that first morning, and they both laughed. "Here's to wrong orders," Sebastian said, raising his coffee cup. "And right people," Danielle added, clinking her cup against his. They sat there together as the morning sun streamed through the café windows, exactly where they had been a year and a half earlier, but everything had changed. Danielle looked at her husband, this man who had shown her what real love looked like, who had pursued her with patience and respect, who had built a life with her that exceeded every dream she had not known she had. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Always." A year later, Danielle stood in the same café, her hand resting on her gently rounded belly, waiting for Sebastian to arrive. She was 4 months pregnant, and they were both terrified and thrilled in equal measure. She had told him last night, watching his face cycle through shock and joy and wonder, and they had stayed up late talking about names and nurseries and how their lives were about to change again. The cafe door opened and Sebastian walked in, his face lighting up when he saw her. He came straight to her, his hand joining hers on her belly. "How are my girls this morning?" he asked. "We don't know if it's a girl yet," Danielle reminded him. "I have a feeling. Call it father's intuition." He kissed her softly. "How are you feeling?" "Good. Hungry." "The baby apparently wants one of those chocolate croissants." Then the baby gets a chocolate croissant. Sebastian ordered their usual drinks and 2 croissants, and they sat at their table, talking quietly about the future. They had already started converting the spare room in their apartment into a nursery, arguing good-naturedly about color schemes and furniture placement. Danielle's mother was beside herself with excitement about becoming a grandmother, and Sophie had already bought enough baby clothes for triplets. "Are you scared?" Sebastian asked. "Terrified," Danielle admitted, "but also excited. We're going to be parents, Sebastian. We're going to have a whole person who's part of both of us. We're going to be amazing at it," he said confidently. "Look at what we've already built together." "This is just the next chapter." Danielle squeezed his hand. "The best chapter." They sat there together, drinking their coffee and planning their future, and Danielle marveled at how one small mix-up had led to all of this. She had been rushing that morning, stressed and focused on work and irritated by the wrong order. She had never imagined that the stranger whose coffee she had accidentally taken would become the love of her life, her husband, the father of her child. But Sebastian had seen something in that moment, some possibility worth pursuing. He had taken the time to find her, to return her breakfast, to show up the next day and the day after that. He had been patient and persistent and genuine, and he had won her heart completely. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, noticing her expression. "Just how lucky I am, how grateful I am that you picked up my coffee that morning." "I'm the lucky one," he countered. "You could have thought I was a stalker when I showed up at your office. Instead, you gave me a chance." "Best decision I ever made." They finished their coffee and walked out together into the spring morning, Sebastian's arm around her shoulders, Danielle's hand still resting on her belly. Their story had started in this cafe with a wrong order and a kind gesture, and it had grown into something beautiful and lasting. 5 years later, they would bring their daughter Maya to this same cafe for the first time, telling her the story of how Mommy and Daddy met. Maya would insist they got the story wrong, that they must have fallen in love at first sight, because that's how love worked in her storybooks. Sebastian and Danielle would exchange smiles over her head, knowing the truth was even better than fairy tales. 7 years later, their son Daniel would be born, and they would bring both kids to the cafe on weekend mornings, a family tradition that felt sacred. The baristas would know all their orders by heart, and the regular customers would nod and smile, recognizing the couple who had become part of the cafe's lore. 10 years later, on their anniversary, Sebastian would surprise Danielle by buying the cafe when the owners decided to retire. "It's where we started," he would say. "I want to make sure it's here forever." Danielle would cry happy tears and kiss him in the middle of the cafe, and their kids would groan and say they were embarrassing but secretly love it. But on this spring morning, with their first baby growing inside her and their whole future stretching out ahead of them, Danielle just walked with her husband through the city they loved, feeling completely and perfectly happy. Wrong orders and right people, she thought. That was the secret to everything. They had found each other by accident, and they had chosen each other every day since. That choice, that commitment, had built something stronger than either of them could have created alone. Love was not just a feeling, Danielle had learned. It was showing up, every single day with coffee and conversation and unwavering support. It was being seen and accepted, flaws and all. It was building a life together, one morning at a time. Sebastian pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple as they walked, and Danielle smiled. This was everything. This was enough. This was more than she had ever dreamed possible, all because a stranger had cared enough to return her breakfast and had kept showing up until she realized he was exactly what she needed. "I love you," she said again, because she would never get tired of saying it. "I love you too," Sebastian replied, his voice warm with affection and promise. "Today and every day." And there, on an ordinary Tuesday morning that felt anything but ordinary, Danielle Owens James walked hand in hand with her husband toward whatever came next, knowing that as long as they were together, it would be extraordinary. Their love story had begun with a simple mistake and a kind gesture, and it would continue for all the years to come, written in morning coffees and shared dreams, and the absolute certainty that they had found in each other exactly what they had been looking for all along, even when they had not known they were searching. The café faded behind them as they turned the corner, but its significance remained. It was the place where everything changed, where wrong became right, where a stranger became a husband. And every morning when they returned, they would remember that moment and be grateful all over again for the beautiful accident that brought them together, and the deliberate choice to build a life worth living, side by side, forever.